All right. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Cultivate with the Evergreen Association. Each episode, we're inviting different guests, and through our conversations, you get a bit of an understanding of what we're about in our region. So today, I have my good friend Eunice Lin-Sawyer with me, who we've collaborated together on a number of things. And I'm really excited to have you. And I want to introduce you to our guests, but a lot of our guests might not know who you are. So could you briefly just tell us a bit of who you are and what you're doing, which is a lot. So, we only have so much time, Eunice, okay? So just try and be concise.
We'll just talk about the one thing that you and I collaborate on. So what takes up a lot of my time is I serve as the Vice President of Neighborhood Transformation at Urban Impact. And that's a nonprofit on the south side of Seattle, and we've been here for about 40 years. And so, that's what I do.
Okay. And then you want to talk about our partnership a little bit?
Yeah. So Urban Impact, we've got multiple divisions, but all of our work is around how do we look at holistic community development in the Rainier Valley, the Rainier Beach, the south side of Seattle. And the particular work that I get to do is we work with churches. And churches that are committed to holistic community development. So a couple of years ago, we got a Lilly grant that allows us to work with 20 churches over the next 5 years. And the whole question is, how can we come alongside churches and help them be adaptive and responsive to the changing needs in their neighborhoods and in their congregations and the communities that they represent? And so when I was brought on board to kind of develop the curriculum for that and figure out pathways to do that, and I am a believer in working collaboratively. And so as we were kind of building out and dreaming, I had known Sam. We knew each other already.
Yeah.
And I was like, we should do this together.
Yeah.
And so I invited you in, and you're now in so deep you can't find a way out. No.
Oh. That's not too far from the truth. And it was interesting because I had applied for the same grant through Evergreen, but we didn't get the grant. And I remember there was just as friends, I came on like sort of a brainstorm dream session. And I had learned that, you had actually done a lot of extensive studying through IDEO and learning about human-centered design thinking. I had also received the certificate from IDEO in human-centered design thinking. And for our listeners who don't know, this is an organization that I guess is focused on how human-centered design thinking works in a number of different disciplines. And we're going to talk about what design thinking means in a second. But I think the turn was, if you really care about this stuff and I care about this stuff, why don't we just make it center stage?
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to do in my original grant. And so when I kind of sketched this out and then it aligned with what you're doing, I think that's when it really took off. Like we were off to the races. And it's been quite a ride since. The momentum we've had within the churches we work with, but even beyond in Greater Seattle. So there's so much I want to say to you, and I want to be mindful and respectful of your time, but I guess we should start with human-centered design thinking. Do you feel comfortable maybe helping people who've never heard of this? What does it mean?
Yeah. So maybe the simplest way of thinking about it is if you unpack its name, human-centered, it really starts with the people who we're focusing on, right? So often if you think about it in the church world, it's easy for us to do ministry for other people, right? To create programs for other people. But when you center humans that you're trying to serve, it recalibrates how we even view and come alongside people. So human-centered design to me really is how do we identify the people that we say we love and want to come alongside and really begin to do the work of deep listening and observing and empathy and trying to understand not just what they need, but in their God-given created being, what do they love? What do they desire? What does God gift up them with? And how do we begin to hear these things to let them inform us about what people care about? Right. And so when we start there and begin to hear what matters to the people, rather than just doing things for them, assuming we know, we come away learning things that we may not have known before. And then it begins this process of being able to say, if these are the insights we're gleaning, then how do we partner with them to actually co-create whatever it is that we're jointly desiring? So I would say human-centered design just recenters who we're listening and who we're working with in order to
Right.
better love people. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think what made me really take off with this was like so many years of pastoring, I just saw that churches often create programs or they'll do things in their churches for the sake of doing them. Like the end result is to accomplish the project or accomplish the event or whatever, bring people in, or, you know, but they're bringing people in, but people for the sake of like funding the church. And it wasn't, the end result was not serving an actual person. It was more like a goal or an ideal they had in mind. And when I learned about human-centered design, it's like, well, what if you remember that everything that you build is actually for the sake of a person, you know? And, you know, biblical language gives us like, all that we do is for the love of neighbor and for the love of God. And I was like, wow, that's so simple, but there's a whole field that takes this really seriously. And I just immediately was drawn to it.
Yeah.
But I was wondering for you, because you got into IDEO in Singapore when you were living there, what was the big draw for you about this? Because at that time, it must have been pretty cutting edge and not really present in any church circles at that time.
Yeah. So I was first introduced to human-centered design thinking 2013 or so. And at that point, so I'm a social worker by training, and I worked in an organization that was overseeing 450 nonprofits in the country. And a lot of our work was policy implementation.
I see.
And so we were a funding organization. We also looked at outcome measures of our programs that we developed. We did a lot of research and evidence-based programming, all of those things. And so for a long time, we kind of identified need based on data and what's happening in the country. And then we would develop programs and invite nonprofits to run them, and we would fund them and we would evaluate them. The huge shift happened when we began to ask, wait, at what point do we actually invite in clients who are receiving services, right? We're projecting the need and we're developing services for them, but we've never really quite centered the voices of clients. And so we were introduced to IDEO and design thinking. And at that point, I was doing a project around how do we help young adults with disabilities enter the workforce? And so we assumed that we knew all these things, but it was completely different when we spent months of field observation and field work actually getting to know young adults and like watching them in their day-to-day lives with their permission and actually going to work with them and watching firsthand the hurdles that they faced and the ways they overcame them, and really getting under the skin, letting them help us understand what were the hurdles. That was transformative because it took someone out of our expert place of research and policy and funding and evaluation to go, they're real experts of their lives and that's not us, right? And so what if we took them seriously because that's technically the most important thing that we should do in our work, and involve them in then saying, as we listen to you and we hear your desires, then help us co-create programs and services that actually benefit you. What stuck for me was when I realized how wrong a lot of our, I wouldn't even call them assumptions because these were evidence-based research data that we're getting, right? But how they missed the mark from the lived experience. And so that was humbling and transformative for me to realize that here we are sanctioning $1 million programs for service providers, but we hadn't taken the work seriously of listening to the very people who are using the services.
And you know, I love how you're saying this because there's so much in church culture, for whatever reason, in the modern church, is they're thinking, we as the church have the solutions, and you don't know it yet. You don't know that your lives are messed up. So let me tell you how you're messed up, and I'll tell you how to solve your problem. And so this is all very prescriptive. It's like we put it upon people. And you know, what you were just talking about, like what if actually the people we're reaching out to could be collaborators with us? What if actually we need them and we need to listen to them? And it makes so much sense, but it's wild how little it's used, you know, and how little it's believed in a lot of leadership circles. There's almost like this sense of like, we're gonna compromise who we are if we listen to them. Like there's a fear, right? And which kind of leads to this thought of like, I think we both share this belief that churches need to be good designers, right? And if you could kind of explain to a church leader, like, why do you need to be a very thoughtful designer? And I think you've already been touching on it, but like, what would you say to like the leadership of the church right now? Like, why is this so important? Like when we talk about design and all this stuff.
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is that people are disillusioned with assuming the church can tell it what it knows, that we can prescribe to people, that this is what you need, right?
Yeah.
We might hold the belief that we know the way and the truth and the life is through Christ, but so many of our actions are disjointed from that, right? Because we have become the way and we hold the truth and we prescribe life for people. But the model of Jesus being with people and walking with people and asking questions that allow them to become co-authors of the life and the path they were going to choose with him. He didn't dictate where they're going to go. He invited them into a conversation to design the life that he was offering them, right? And I think about the church, and I think about if we were to listen to image bearers, and we could see how God has already begun the work, and we're drawing out things from them and co-creating with the gifts that only they have, and we hold some, but they hold the ones that we don't have. I think we step into something really sacred that is outside the realm of the church, right? That not all of that exists within the realm of the church. I'll give this is an anecdote, but I think this illustrates it well. I remember when I was doing work with this young adult, and we had spent 2 days following her to and fro work, and she was visually impaired. And I remember watching her cross the street, being visually impaired. I watched her trying to get onto a crowded train, and change train platforms and take a bus. And at the end of it, she arrived at the office 2 hours later, dripping in sweat. And our team went back and thought, man, the best way to help this young adult get to work with a disability is to just offer her like a bus ride. Let's just do a access van kind of thing that picks her up and drops her off, right? That would keep her life so much simpler. And when we presented a prototype back to her, we were shocked when she said, why would you do that? Like, getting to work every day is the most dignifying, exhilarating thing for me. And I was like, your dripping sweat does not seem to tell me that. And she's like, but didn't you guys followed me? Didn't you see all the people that I had along the way, and the bus driver that was waiting for me, and the lady, my friend who knew to keep the door open for me, and she had developed and found strengths and coping mechanisms and assets and gifts that we completely did not see, right? And I think about that all the time when the church assumes that when we look at people who are not saved and who need what we have to offer, that we can so easily not see the beautiful gifts that have been curated around them. And so I think a lot about the humility it takes to see what we don't see to co-create with people.
And I feel like that's an awesome story, because that really encapsulates the difference between like what I call like a designer and a conqueror. I feel like a conqueror is like, okay, we've built this amazing thing and you're gonna love it whether you like it or not, right? Like, we've got this van, get in there. And you're trying to say all along is like, this isn't what I asked for, this isn't who I am. Like, the fact that you built this means you don't know me. And I feel like designers are like, I wanna get to know you, and I wanna design something that, is in line with who you are, sees you, respects you, and cares for you. And isn't it wild? Like, I'm saying all this stuff, but I remember, and I share this story all the time, like, I was in a church council meeting, and I was so clear of like, this is what the church needs to do. I'd already done all my research, did all my hard work. But when everyone went around the room and I was listening to them, I was so humbled, because as they were sharing, I knew what I was about to say about my great plan I was about to unveil in that meeting. It was all wrong, because what I was hearing here. And I remember how painful it was for me to surrender my conquering mindset, No one knew it in the meeting, but in my head, I was in so much pain, because I was like, I'm gonna let go of all my ideas, my preconceived notions, my assumptions, and I think I'm gonna let you build this because I didn't listen to you. I'm gonna let you design this because I didn't listen to you. And it's so hard, isn't it, to change that mindset?
Absolutely. And I think what's really hard about it is that no one is doing this with intentional heart. We're not setting out to be conquerors or fixers. We're doing it from well-intentioned. I think I want to serve you. I want to love you. We use all the same language, right? And I think why this is so transformative / hard is that it gets to the core of what we've assumed or learned or watched to be our role as ministers,
Yes.
right? Or social workers, anyone in the helping profession, right?
Yes.
That I'm here to help you.
Yes.
And it's good and noble and kind, but that's very different from, I think, the model that Jesus has for us about calling us to step fully into who we're made to be, right? And if he kept helping the disciples and he didn't send them out and he didn't leave them and he didn't give them the Spirit, like, they would never have grown into all that they imperfectly were made to be at that point. And so I think so much of it is hard because we started out wanting to help. And I think we sometimes struggle with knowing when we're less helpful, when we do for rather than do with. And that kind of takes us out of the expert role of knowing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so much wisdom. You know, it's funny how when I think of human-centered design, it actually seems a lot more aligned with what Jesus was about. And you know, a lot of times what churches do is like, oh, we're trying to learn the latest fad or the latest paradigm, and you know, how can it help the church? But I feel like with this, when I was studying human-centered design, I was like, no, actually, I think Christianity has something to contribute to this discussion. It's not like we're behind and we're learning. Like, if we actually really understood what's behind these principles, they're very much in line with Jesus, as you were saying, right? And you know, even my dissertation was about maybe actually we have a unique contribution that can't come from anywhere else because of the paradigm we see in Jesus. And so it's really exciting. You know, there's, oh man, a million things I want to say, and I know we don't have forever, but I've been so struck about your passion, your passion for the church, your passion for reconciliation, and community organizing, and just, you know, social work. And I wonder, what is it behind you that drives all this? Like this amazing intersection that is Eunice, right? What are the big things that are driving all these things going forward?
When I was called into full-time ministry, I knew that it got crystallized for me with two things, right? That I knew I was called to love the church.
Yeah.
And I knew that I was called to pursue mercy and justice for those in the margins. And I think all of my life is an intersection of that. I think because I love the church, I have this burning commitment and desire to see the church be different and better. Because I'm committed to the church, I jokingly say this, right? I grew up a pastor's kid. I'm always going to be here. I've always been in it. And that's why I'm going to poke at it, right? Not because I'm disloyal, but because I'm like, there is so much more that we need to be different. And I think people on the margins, people who are left out of the table, they teach us things that insiders and power holders don't see or know how to listen or know how to reckon with, right? And so I think a lot of my work is bridging those worlds, right? Of who's inside and who's outside. What is it like to flip some of those dynamics? How do we, and the beautiful thing about human-centered design is that it always brings in the voice of people, right? So data is important, but how do you bring in the voice and the story of someone? Sometimes without the context, to help people go, wait a minute, where is this coming from? And it feels left field sometimes, but I think it really helps get to the heart of a lot of things. And I think people on the margins and the way Jesus always preferred and had a preferential treatment of those in the margins was that it was always refining who we are, right? And it's always causing us to be displaced in some way because we're not meant to take up space. We're not meant to be centered. We're meant to keep shifting, right? And holding space and expanding the table. And so I think my burning passion is, how do we connect and bridge people? But to me, it's those who have power and those who do not, those who have resources and those who do not, right? Those who are heard and those who are not. Like, how do we keep bridging those things into ways that are transgressive, in ways that are confrontational, but hopefully not for confrontation's sake, right? But for I never knew that, right? And I think that's the space that when I think about God asking Adam and Eve, like, where are you? Like, it's not a question of, like, God knows exactly where they are, right? But I think it's always a question of invitation to be reconciled. And so I think, that's something that I love to do, of bridging those spaces.
Yeah, no, well said. I mean, and I think that really shines through in all the work that you're doing, and why design thinking means so much, because like a lot of it is about, listening to the voices, and then how can we really make meaningful things that include what we've heard, you know, and that has certainly been driving a lot of the work I do at Evergreen with the Numa initiative. Just a lot of things I approach with life now. You know, it's funny, I guess as we do this stuff, it's not just our job, it's like kind of
Who we are.
yeah, it's who we are. It's our
Yeah.
identity, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
And we just need to walk into it.
Yeah.
And if it means that we're going to do this kind of stuff, then so be it, right? So I have a million more things I'd love to ask you about, but I know you need to go. I'm so grateful for Emerald City Bible Fellowship in South Seattle for hosting this space. And this is also the home of Urban Impact. Really grateful for you and the work that you're doing, and grateful for all the listeners here on Cultivate. Please subscribe. There are more interesting conversations on the way. And thanks again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Talk to you soon.